Hey yo everybody, welcome to episode 5 of the This Week in Overwatch League podcast with your boy ATP, and we've got a bunch of stuff to talk about in this particular episode. There's a lot to unpack. For starters, we now know which teams are going to be participating in the Midseason Madness a couple of weeks from now. I'll be talking about all of my general expectations with that, and some stuff that you usually wouldn't get from like a typical prediction video. Also, I'll be discussing some news that actually just came out today that could impact the entire league as a whole. That'll be towards the end. And of course, the primary aspect of this video will be discussing Week 6. It's finally in the books. Knockouts are done with and over with in both regions, and they managed to make things pretty dramatic basically until the very end. So we're going to recap all of the big moments and matches and clips and any other surprises or disappointments that came with it. Before we do though, just a little PSA, little announcement. I'm going to be opening up this bad boy this Friday on stream here on YouTube. It's a Upper Deck Overwatch League inaugural season trading card set with some sick signed cards and memorabilia. There's 24 packs total. It'll be a sick blast from the past, so to speak. A lot of the OG fans might enjoy that. So Jeff, definitely check out the stream, or bare minimum, check out the VOD afterwards. It's going to be a lot of fun on my Scuff setup. Promise you won't regret it. But now on to your regularly scheduled programming. And where I wanted to start this one is usually actually where I tend to end my podcast, and that is looking towards the future. I want to talk about the mid-season madness a little bit. So officially, we know who is punching their tickets to Korea. We got the Reign, Outlaws, Uprising, Mayhem, Spark, and Infernal. Through 6 hard-fought weeks, these teams have made their way, showing that they are the best ones out there and they deserve to be here. And, you know, based off of the last, couple of weeks at the start of the season, I'd say maybe aside from, the Spark in Boston, if you were doubting them coming into, week 4, let's say, the participants really aren't too shocking. I'd say as of right now, and not just because they made the tournament, that these are probably the 6 best teams in the league. Well, at least, the 2 best from APAC and 4 best from the West. And that's how it should be, right? I think that it just means we have better competition, better potential for really good banger matches and upsets, so to speak. As much as I love the whole cool underdog, unexpected team story, it's just less likely they're going to make a run compared to a lot of some of these powerhouses. I think this gives us the best evenly matched matchups with a lot of really awesome franchises. And what's cool is none of these teams have actually won anything before. The Florida Mayhem won Pro-Am, which is cool, I guess, but a lot of people don't really count that. So no matter who wins this, someone's going to be adding their names to the legacy list. Someone's going to finally have that far-eluded first place finish. And 3 of them, I guess 4 if you count in Seoul Infernal, happen to be inaugural season teams. So that's pretty awesome. And speaking of competition and where these teams are at and what's on the line, I figured we could maybe do a little quick rundown and preview of the bracket with some thoughts on it. No spoilers, of course, because Preds will be coming in a couple of weeks. But just some basic thoughts, So for starters, in the upper bracket quarterfinals, Spark play Mayhem, battle of the pink teams, and then Boston and Houston look to renew their very long rivalry that goes all the way back to the inaugural season. And these two feel pretty interesting on paper. Starting with Mayhem versus Spark, I suppose. They just might match up a bit better on paper than you think. I think that Mayhem and Spark, they're both very monkey-centric. That's where they obviously look the most comfortable. They both have prolific tracers. Checkmate and Leave have been great this year. They both have elite hit scans. And what's cool is both teams kind of have good storylines heading into this one. Mayhem as the young team are looking to prove themselves, while Spark are looking to show that vintage Leave, Shy, I guess, Gushway and Spark tournament buff that they tend to have for these moments. In terms of, the favorites, I think a lot of people would lean towards Florida, right? Because they have the better support line, and they're just better at rush comps. Spark literally just don't play them at all. They don't play Ramatra in the slightest. They're not good at it. But on the other hand, the Spark definitely have the experience over Mayhem. They're less likely to fold under the pressure. They have a lot of guys who are just born for these moments. So it could really go either way, especially with this West versus East philosophy on the line. When 2 different regions clash like this, the results a lot of the time end up being interesting. Both teams can't really get a grasp for each other. It's not what they're used to. So it makes it so anything is possible, even if you maybe prefer one team over the other. I think that region difference oftentimes deletes a lot of that stuff. Mayhem for a lot of people are the favorites just because they're from the West, I'd assume. But you really can't count out the Spark just based off of their history and Mayhem never playing a team like this before, you know? I think this game could be a lot closer than we think, and it could sneak up as potentially one of the better matches in the tournament. As for the Uprising in Houston game, I think that in most people's eyes, Outlaws are going to be favored. They're like the second best team in the league for a bunch of people. They've been that consistent. But Boston are getting better and better and better week by week, and they're just improving, and they look like a really strong powerhouse that you cannot underestimate. And now we're in a situation, I mean, just based off of on paper and who these teams have, where we're in a clash of the super teams almost. Like, they both have stars from top to bottom at every single position. They are absolutely loaded, and both prefer the same type of style. They love the dive comps, and they happen to be crazy good at them. And with that comes a lot of epic matchups. Like, you have the Houston versus Boston rivalry being renewed, those fans going at each other, some of the most fateful out there. But then you think about the players, like Smurf versus Fearless, two of the biggest tank legends. That's like box office right there, especially in a monkey mirror. That support battle, if Twilight shows up like he has, is going to go hard. Then you have a very exciting DPS battle with a potential Birdring versus Happy Sniper duel, with Pelican versus Decay on Tracer. Like, there's a lot going on in this series in a lot of different places. I think there's something for everyone to look forward to, really. And something worth noting, which I think is why people are excited for this one, and they consider them to be one of the two better teams in the league, is because they happen to be the only two teams so far that have taken maps off the Atlanta Reign. That's a pretty big deal, considering how dominant the team has been so far this season. Like, Houston, for most people, probably feel like they're better on paper, but I just don't think Boston can be underestimated. They seem to be getting hot at the right time right now, and I suspect that could mean that a lot of teams are in for a bigger fight than they had originally intended to be in. Generally, though, I think the closeness of this game probably comes down to Boston, right? The Outlaws have been a very consistent team. We can trust in them. But Boston, while they have gotten a lot better, do sometimes falter, like we saw in that Justice series. I mean, they damn near lost it, and some people argue they probably should have lost it. So are we going to get that version of Boston, or the one that 3-0s Glads and looks good against Atlanta Reign? You just never know. I'd lean towards the latter of the two with how they're looking right now, but I'm just saying there's a lot of variables that could go into that, and it could lead to a Houston blowout if Boston do wake up on the wrong side of the bed. In terms of what's on the line with these two matchups, I should say, I think it's pretty interesting how the bracket is laid out. Like, these matches themselves are tough, and there's no guarantee you win them. But if you do, it's obvious that one side of the bracket is in a much better place than the other. I'd say Houston and Boston are very happy with the results. This first game's going to be hard. But if they get by, they're playing Seoul Infernal instead of Atlanta Reign. They're dodging them in the semis. Like, Seoul Infernal, they're respectable, don't get me wrong. But Atlanta Reign, they've just been the best team by far. So not having to deal with them until the upper bracket finals would be quite beneficial. And then if you lose, you just have to win one game and you get another crack at them, this time in a 1-4. So honestly, Outlaws, Boston, Seoul Infernal, if you play well enough, you're sitting pretty to at least get like a top 3 finish. Like, you're in a great place to succeed. Happy for them. Spark and Mayhem, though, probably going to have to do a lower bracket run. It's going to be a bit harder. Those fans are probably sweating bullets just knowing that Atlanta Reign are waiting for them, even though they could be exhausted in this battle beforehand, and then later in the night play Atlanta. Like, man, that's crazy. I'm trying my best to adopt the anything is possible mentality, though. Maybe these teams could beat Atlanta, you know? Like, we've seen a lot of surprising stuff happen this year. It seems like past results really don't mean that much. It depends on the week, depends on what you're ready for. So you never know. Speaking of Atlanta, though, and, you know, them being so good, I think there is some caveat to that because we just don't know if anyone can beat them. Like, that's the question I want to ask you. Can anyone actually defeat Atlanta Reign? Is it possible? Are we just wasting our time with this tournament? I feel like the answer is no. I feel like it is possible, but more importantly, there's a lot of other good matches that could make up for any potential sour taste that Reign leave in our mouths if they dominate. But right now, I will admit the Reign are the clear-cut favorites, right? It doesn't feel like anyone can beat them. I think it's possible, but it's pretty unlikely because of how unstoppable they look. Like, I don't know if it even matters if other teams are having a good tournament, right? With Sombra being in the meta, Atlanta Reign just immediately have an advantage. It's what happened with Shanghai in 2021, and now it's going to be happening with Atlanta Reign, right? Like, when Lip is in his prime, playing some of the best Overwatch we've ever seen on his signature hero, How can you match them? Who the hell can even hope to? Even Houston have a hard time, and they're arguably the second best Sombra team by a pretty clear margin. Like, with how prominent this character is, Lip and those guys just feel like they're going to roll you. Lip, with that kind of support, with Stalker, in his comfort zone, also with that support line, it almost feels like it's curtains. Like, you can try and avoid that matchup, sure. You can go for something else, but that's the meta pick right now, so it might not matter. Like, you're going to have to draw up one heck of a game plan to even stand a chance. And on top of that, a few of your guys probably need to have an out-of-body experience, Otherwise, you're in for one heck of a fight, as we've seen time after time this season. And what's sad is a lot of the time your counter plans probably won't even be enough because Atlanta Reign happened to be really good at responding to these things. Like, just think about Boston and Houston, right? They took maps off Atlanta Reign. The first map, to set the tone, just for Atlanta to punch back and win 3 straight against both of them. Like, if you attempt to shut a part of their team down, everyone else is very quick to respond and adjust, and even the person you're bullying finds ways to wake up and play better. Like, Houston, for example, they had a very obvious game plan to bully Lip and take him out of the equation, and he adjusted. He played smarter with his translocator. The team played smarter. Other guys stepped up, like Stalker and Chio. They just have ways around all of your punches. It is very impressive. It's a very smart group. They're really good with their adaptations mid-game. And you just can't tunnel vision onto any specific guy. It needs to be a total team outing to even stand a chance. Like, it takes an absolute giga-brained, 5-head, hive mind mentality to beat them. And even that collective effort, when you play perfectly, still might not be enough because Atlanta Reign are playing arguably some of the most dominant Overwatch in Overwatch League history, at least so far. Like, it could be a stretch even for Houston to beat them, which is sad. Like, I think they have the best chance, but even they may not stand a chance. Really, I think more than anything, you're just hoping Atlanta play worse. I think it's going to be on them. This is their tournament to lose. They need to fumble from the pressure because they're the obvious favorites. They're undefeated. They're the ones with targets on their backs. That's what you need if you're these other teams, for Atlanta to just have a tournament debuff, so to speak. The only problem is their team seems to live for these moments. I actually think they might play even better or be one of the teams that's just completely unaffected by it. They have 3 former champions on their team, right? Chio and Fielder just won last year in a lane environment. Lip has won before. Lip is the MVP frontrunner. He loves the spotlight from what I can see and hear. I just don't know what you do. If I was a fan of any other team in this bracket, if I'm seriously gunning to win and not just there to have a good time, I'd be terrified of Atlanta Reign. To make a long story short, I think very few teams stand a chance, if any, if Atlanta bring their A game as they have consistently. And they sadly may be the only reason this bracket isn't unpredictable because the rest of it is looking pretty good. I think a lot of the matches, both in the upper and the lower, could be very surprising, very epic. We could see some new rivalries form. It's just that Atlanta Reign may kill the vibe of someone taking home the gold over them, you feel me? But that's how it goes a lot of the time. That's unfortunately the deal with these types of things. Sometimes you have those teams that are just the team of destiny, and Atlanta Reign sadly feel like that right now. But you never know who's going to go crazy in a tournament run. You never know. That's the mindset I'm trying my best to adopt because of my past and never doing those types of things. I think Land is a completely different animal. If you wake up on the right side of the bed, maybe you could shut down Reign, send them to hell, make them wake up. And even if you do, they might just play even better from it, like the shock from a couple of years ago. I don't know. I'm just hoping that Land makes things interesting and we end up having some shakeups that we maybe didn't expect. That's basically my thought process on the bracket, though. I think Reign are the team to beat. Boston and Houston have the best possible path to maybe making an upset happen and getting first place over them, or at least just avoiding Atlanta Reign for as much as humanly possible. So now let's move on from the bracket talks and I guess move into a recap of the week, shall we? And let's start with the West. I forgot. Overwatch League website is changing. It's a little awkward now. Bear with me. Okay, so here we are. Friday, June 2nd, right? Let's restart. I think I want to begin, though, with the Boston Uprising. I just talked about them a lot in that specific matchup with Houston Outlaws and the possibility of them maybe making a deep run. But I think they had a really clutch week, Going into this week, I expected them to make it through. I thought it'd come through the losers bracket, but I thought they were going to punch their tickets to Korea. But they did so in pretty impressive fashion with a couple of clutch performances. Specifically that Justice game, right? I think that's probably the best place to start, because they nearly did get sent to the lower bracket by them, this underdog Justice team. Credit goes where it's due. This was a 5-map banger that literally came down to the third round on Lijiang Tower. Justice gave them hell. Like, they were not backing down. They were ready for them. But Boston responded. It was impressive. They didn't let the Justice overwhelm them. They played well when they needed to. And a lot of their guys showed that they are still clutch performers even after all of these years, like Twilight and Birdring and such. Boston, for a while, seemed like they were in control. Like, Washington won round 1. But then Boston obviously looked better on Hollywood and Shambhala Monastery as well. Like, they were in control of this series. It kind of seemed like they might just 3-1. But Justice fought back. They continued to make this an interesting series, and for a while it almost seemed like they turned the tide. Once they won New Queen Street, it seemed like they maybe overcame their demons. They get to Lijiang, and for a while it seemed like they were actually going to take that map and just move on to the winners finals to maybe potentially punch their tickets to Korea and beat Gladiators. You never know what might have ended up happening there. But Boston, they're the story in this one. Sorry, Justice. Boston were the ones to clutch up. And I think it's largely because of some crazy antics from Twilight and Birdring. I think those two were the difference makers in this series for sure. Twilight, I think, generally throughout the weekend was just insane. That guy's a freak of nature on the Ana. He made a massive difference in all the maps that he played. It felt like Boston were a scarier team when he was in the game compared to alexyOWL for sure. And it makes you wonder maybe if alexyOWL should just stay benched with how Twilight's playing. You just run the hot hand. I know for me personally, I was thinking, maybe Boston aren't at full strength while alexyOWL was dealing with his collapsed lung. Maybe they won't be as good as they could be, but it just so happens that they're playing better with him on the bench. Like, Twilight with the way he's playing just makes them way scarier. With the Birdring stuff, though, I think he also deserves a lot of credit. I think Twilight kept them in the game, but Birdring was the one to finish it. And it's largely because of the crazy stuff he did on map 5. I mean, for one, you have the weird Ryan Bastion comp. I mean, that was absolutely sick when he got that double kill through the window. That was absolutely nasty. And seeing Smurf break out the Ryan was so random, but so fun. And the fact that it found success makes it even more enjoyable. But more importantly, I think Birdring is, and I guess to a certain extent Decay, are the reason they end up not losing on that final round on Lijiang. If you missed it, Birdring actually had a ridiculous stall. Birdring and Decay, like, it's 99-99. Justice just found a few kills. alexyOWL's like about to die too. He like falls off the map. It was hilarious, but like they're down a few. It's up to Decay and Birdring to stall this, and they do. They absolutely do. They're dancing on the point. They're refusing to even let it flip. Birdring's like, he's bobbing and weaving. Decay's bobbing and weaving. They're both on the point, trying their best to just pressure the Justice players because they're also down members. And then literally right when it matters most, they get their backup back. Birdring gets a clutch hack on the mirror, and then he gets EMP, and they win it because of this. Birdring played such unbelievably clutch Overwatch. It reminded me of the good old days of like the Gladiators run in 2021, and like even what he did in 2020. That's the Birdring that I saw. A lot of people were wondering, is he washed? Is he going to be as good after, coming back from retirement? And to be fair, at the start, he didn't look that great, but he really stepped up in this series and showed us why he's still an elite player and why he was worth getting signed to this team. Him and Decay absolutely carried when they needed to here at the end. Excellent stuff out of them. Excellent stuff out of Twilight. It was very close. Like, it shouldn't have been this close, if I'm being honest. They should have beaten a team like this easier, but, they got the job done. And that's really what matters. So good on them for getting that W. In terms of how things went from there, though, they also would, of course, end up playing the LA Gladiators the very next day. And, part of us were thinking, with Gladiators beating down Florida Mayhem as bad as they did, and Boston barely beating Justice, that this could be a pretty good game. But in the end, ended up being a pretty big blowout in Boston's favor. Like, I mean, aside from Ilios, they seem like they're the ones in control of this one, even breaking out that silly Ryan comp again. They 3-0'd an LA Gladiators team that just 3-0'd Florida, which is just a credit to them. A credit to them getting stronger when it matters, maybe being more prepared for Gladiators than Justice. I don't know for sure. But, again, It was all on Twilight just being an absolute freak. This guy will not stop. He's playing one of the greatest stretches of Overwatch from a flex support in a very long time. Like, it goes back to a couple of weeks ago, not just this tournament. This guy's been playing clean since that Izayaki, I guess, injury happened. I don't even know. A health issue, I guess I should say, happened. He's been on a different level. Like, he refuses to go down like this. He is ready to be a god tier flex support again. He looks like the best Ana in the league. I don't think there's any question right now. With the way this guy's playing on Ana, he is unstoppable, and he makes his team unstoppable. All of the bio-nades, the sleeps. This guy could not do wrong in this series. He completely took the Gladiators out of fights before it could even begin. He was shutting down plays made by Kevster and Kai. They had absolutely zero chance, like especially on Hollywood. Kai had a horrible time. He had like more deaths than he did kills. It's just insane. It is insane when an Ana can completely ruin you the way Twilight did in this series. That is like, there's just no way you're going to lose when your flex support is the one absolutely dominating. And that's on top of Decay, who I believe had a deadlift in the series. I don't remember if it was this one or the Justice series, but he had a deadlift at some point. Him and Decay were going off. I thought Twilight should have won player of the match for this one. I was a little sad he didn't because his Ana was just stupid. He is firing on all cylinders, and I think if he continues to play this way, Boston's ceiling may not have any sort of limitations, and they could make a deep playoff run. This is the kind of stuff you need. If the backline can step up while Smurf stays consistent and Decay and Birdring are doing their thing, they're going to be a tough team to take down, and Gladiators found that out the hard way. They had all of the momentum in the world after beating Florida, and it got shut down instantly by a really scary team. Twilight was just stupid. Decay was just stupid. Just a great game from Boston. Very proud of them for stepping up after nearly choking away in the first round the day before. Really great stuff to see them make Korea. This is well deserved. Like, they finally beat their boom delegations all together. It's done. No one can say that anymore. They're ready to make a finals run in Korea potentially. It's just, I don't know if they're consistent enough. That's like the one thing. They seem to almost lose one game, then sweep the next. That's like the one problem with them. But maybe making Korea is the confidence booster they needed to overcome such a thing. I guess we'll find out in a couple of weeks though. Regardless, congratulations to the Boston Uprising. You got through a couple of weeks of hell at the start and are looking really good right now. But speaking of the Gladiators and beating them, we should probably talk about the wild week they had, because it definitely goes beyond losing to Boston Uprising the way they did, right? They were so close to Korea, and yet so far. They had two chances to clinch it with a W, right? Against Boston and then against Florida. They had two finals appearances, and they managed to lose both of them. One in blowout fashion, and one in, I'd say, pretty disappointing fashion. So, early on, they were able to overcome their demons of the Florida Mayhem and continue to be their kryptonite, so to speak. And they beat them down pretty good. With a friggin' 3-0. Like, I know they had beaten them in the regular season, but that game was really close. This was just not even close. Like, Mayhem woke up on the wrong side of the bed. Everything was going right for Gladiators. Kevster was absolutely dominating in this series from start to finish. Like, Mayhem stood zero chance. Gladiators beat them on all of their map picks. They completely boomed them and could do literally anything they wanted in this matchup. Like, it's a crazy rivalry that's forming between these two. It's amazing. Like, Florida have been the better team all season. They've been more consistent. They're the stronger team on paper. But whenever they play Gladiators, it's just something different happens. Something goes wrong. It's a team that I don't know if they're afraid of. It's just a mental thing almost. They cannot stop them. They cannot stop Kevster, Kevin Gaming, if you will. They just can't. It's awesome. It's like a really surprising series, and it reminds me a lot almost of the last time the Mayhem were extremely relevant, right? 2020 against LA Valiant. They're a better team all season than Valiant, but they lose to them every single time. It has that exact kind of vibe to it. So cool on the Gladiators for at least pushing them, but they just couldn't finish the job. They couldn't finish the job against Boston, like I was saying. Kevster really couldn't do much of anything. He got subbed out, couldn't pop off as hard. And it makes you wonder, maybe Mayhem just had a hard time and woke up on the wrong side of the bed. I don't know. But they did prove that, maybe they really did get lucky, because later on they did get a rematch against the Florida Mayhem, the LA Gladiators, one last time. Well, I guess I should say a rematch for Florida Mayhem. You get what I mean, though. So they played one more time. And the first half of that series for Gladiators was abysmal. Like, that was like proof right there alone almost that Florida Mayhem maybe just had a really bad day the first time they played. If I can find the right one. Oh, no, I forgot. Overwatch League website is updating. I'll have to go to the Wikipedia page. Yeah, here we go. So it starts off really bad, right? They're down 2-0 in this series. They lose the first 2 maps miserably, I'd like to add. So now all of a sudden you're in a situation where you're like, oh, maybe Gladiators really did get lucky. Maybe it's all over for them. This is how they're going to go down. They're going to lose 2 games. 2 games that could have punched Korea for them. Like, they're playing so sloppily. Their comps aren't working well for them. Their dives look bad. They can't even play well on Ramatra. Their execution's garbage. Bad ult usage. The EMPs from Yaki were god-awful, etc. Mayhem were pounding them into the dirt, basically. Kai was looking bad. Kevster was getting outplayed by Checkmate. The Gladiators looked very lost in this series. It looked like an absolute done deal. They were cooked after Blizzard World. Not even close. But then the second half happens. Then the second half comes and you're like, hold up, wait a second. They already beat Mayhem twice this year. Ain't no way they're going down like this. And sure enough, on Shambali, a map that Mayhem haven't been that good on, they beat them down pretty good. Florida had a reasonably good defense, but Gladiators fought back and had an even better defense. Florida end up with a big fat 0 on the boards, and suddenly the momentum is starting to flip a little. And I think a large part of it is because of how they played. Again, it was a pretty close map on paper, even if the score would say otherwise. But I think the confidence was probably coming through from Glads when you see this score line right here. There was a ridiculous Ramatra diff that came in this matchup. Someone, in the Mayhem have been struggling on this composition a little bit, but this just takes it to a whole new level. Look at these stats, man. Look at it. This is one of the most absurd tank diffs on a single map I have ever seen. Literally triple the final blows, double the pummel kills, triple the annihilation kills. This is one of the fattest per 10 differentials that I have ever seen between 2 solid teams. I wouldn't say elite. I wouldn't go that far for Glads, but 2 solid teams, Crazy stuff. One of the craziest Ramatra diffs in League history, probably the most, and it'll probably stay that way. This just was not close, even if the map itself did feel close. Dante is showing exactly why he is a godly Ramatra. This was just a gap and a half. And then, though, Mayhem still had a chance to close this out, and for a while it felt like they would. Push was going back and forth for a while on Esperanza. It felt like it was anyone's game, but towards the end of the map, Mayhem's execution was getting cleaner. They had a good lead. They just needed to win one more fight, and it was a GG. But then they threw it away. Showing that this team is just their boogeyman for some strange reason. Everything is going completely fine until they start with their horrible execution and really bad staggers, like Checkmate dying randomly. Lads win a fight, Checkmate dies when they're halfway through a push. It was just a complete disaster. They couldn't take any real fights together until it was too late. Gladiators end up taking the lead on them when they really shouldn't have. But luckily for Mayhem, even through all of that, there was still a chance to win. We'd seen crazier things happen, right? We had seen crazier pushes happen in Overwatch League. We've seen bigger deficits be overcome. We've seen teams win more fights in a row than just 1 or 2. That's all they needed. Just 1 or 2 fight wins in a row. They could still win the map. They could save it from going to a map 5 and potentially getting reverse swept. Until this happens. If you missed this, man, did you miss out, because this is one of the worst C9s I have seen in a very long time. This was a bad one, folks. If you have a fetish for C9s, this is the one to watch. So Florida, yeah, as you can see, they lost the lead, right? Gladiators are in control. There's about 9 or so seconds left. They have time to contest. Mara, as you can see on the left-hand side of the screen, he's right where he needs to be, right near this phone booth or whatever this is, a bus station. He's in prime position to be touching. There's 3 seconds left. At 1 second, he can uncloak himself. Everything will be fine. Mayhem can still fight this. They have a pulse bomb. They have a rally. They can keep this going. And Gladiator's ult economy really isn't that great right now. So this could quickly snowball if you play clean enough. Glads are scrambling. You can do it. It doesn't even look like they have all of their team members there. But then Merritt just doesn't touch. 2, 1, just staring. He's just staring. There's 1 second. What are you doing? 0.7. No. And Zero still hasn't uncloaked. Still has not uncloaked. No one else is even in a position to touch. I don't know if there was miscommunication or if nerfs were getting to Merit here, if he wasn't keeping an eye on the clock, but he just completely fumbled and threw away a potential chance to end the series right here. All he had to do was uncloak and he was good. And, like, there's no one else in the vicinity. He has to know this is on him. I don't know why that happened. Like, was there a miscommunication issue? Like, was someone else supposed to touch? I just don't see how that's possible with how far away everybody else is. This is just a really bad C9 by Merit. And he's lucky in the end it did not cost them this series. That's all I'm going to say. This is a bad one, though. This is a really bad one. Kevster saying C9, they're like, lol. Like, look at that. Merit's like, damn, bro. Forgot to touch the cart. Or the bot, rather. Yeah. I don't know, man. I don't know. That was really bad, though. So at this point, after losing that first game, or that third map, in a dominant Ramatra fashion, and then C9ing on map 4 in reverse sweep territory, all I'm thinking is, how do Florida possibly come back from something like this? This map has come, or this game, I should say, has completely flipped on its head. You really, I don't even know what you do at this point. You have zero momentum whatsoever. After dominating the first half of this series, you let your boogeyman, so to speak, get right back into the game, and now you're probably thinking, damn, are we going to lose to this team again? Are we really going to let this team beat us for a third time and keep us from going to Korea? Beat us twice in the same tournament, mind you. Like, that's what's on my mind. I'm pretty boomed if I'm a player at this point. That is tough. But, they had good mental fortitude. Better mental fortitude than I would ever have. Like, they came out swinging on Antarctic Peninsula, which, mind you, I already thought was a questionable map choice. It's a really good Ramatra map, which in theory should favor Gladiators. You'd think they'd maybe go Ilio since it's very dive-centric, but they're like, hey, no. We're going to go to Antarctic. We have a plan. We're going to overcome this mentally, even though we had stupid mistakes in reverse sweep territory. They picked this questionable map. They win the first fight, and all of a sudden, you're feeling really good. They stabilize super quick, and critically, their rush looks a lot better than what we had seen the last couple of days. And they actually ended up forcing the Glads into an unfavorable matchup, which surprised me since that's not something Gladiators usually do. They usually don't try and force that kind of stuff. We see them play Junker Queen and anti-dive stuff and their own standard rush composition with the Ramatra, but for some reason they wanted to take the Mayhem and that Reaper Moira comp, and that's just not a good look for this team. It goes against what a lot of their carries can do, what Lastro and Kevster can do. Kevster on the Reaper is not it. That is like one of the only heroes he is not great on, and you want Lastro probably on like his Baptiste because he's been carrying on that hero as of late. Like, Mayhem forced them into a trap, and Glads fell for it hook, line, and sinker. They had every reason to come back and win this series. Mayhem were on the ropes, and they just couldn't take advantage. They ended up not letting the bleeding continue. Mayhem stop it. They have the band-aids ready, I guess. Reverse sweep is avoided. Crisis avoided. Korea, here they come. Like, I don't know, man. This was like a wild roller coaster of emotions. It seems like Mayhem got it. Then it seems like Mayhem should be boomed. They're going to lose to their boogeyman. And then they wake up. It was like they're in a really bad dream, but then they realized it's a lucid dream. They realized they were dreaming and they made it stop happening. I don't know how else to explain it. It was hilarious, though. It's a tough loss for Gladiators. I mean, I doubted them. I apologize to their fan base. I doubted them more than I should have. They had a good run. Nearly made the finals on 2 different occasions. They had 2 chances, but they came up short and again showed inconsistencies. I think that's, part of why I was so critical of them last week, This is why. Stuff like this. They look so good one game, but then they have moments like this, like just bad execution. They seem unprepared for specific opponents, like with Boston. And then sometimes the execution is just bad on their end. Like, Yaki Sombra is just a little too inconsistent. That partially costed them. Like, they just dug themselves into too big of a hole, I guess. Like, one that they couldn't overcome, even with some help from the Mayhem, which is tragic. But that's how it goes. That is how it goes. At least there's a chance that, with this kind of performance that they can maybe do better in the knockouts come this August or September, whenever it is. I don't know. Not the worst look for the Gladiators, but it felt like they kind of threw away some good chances, in my opinion. As for the Mayhem, the victors, this was a well-needed W for these boys, huh? They really needed this one for their confidence because they've never really gotten too far so far in any season together. And, they're trying to deny this label of being chokers, and they did it. And this was a really good way to. It shows good mental resilience by overcoming a potential reverse sweep like this. They had to prove they can handle the spotlight as well in a big winner-go-home situation, and they did. This is the clutchness that you really want to see from a team. Like, this is what shows they're capable of making a deep tournament run, potentially. But kind of like with Boston, the consistency definitely needs to improve. Their weekend, while it did get better over time, was anything but clean. I mean, they had two good games, like with the Shock and the Justice game. They looked pretty in control in those ones, but their Gladiators matchups were not the best, There is a lot of room for them to improve still, and hopefully the next couple of weeks do them some good, and it's a good mental reset, and they get some decent practice in. If they want to go far, though, Mayhem fans, I think they have to do a bit better, because this tournament is no joke. It's not like they're playing these underdogs that, don't have as good of a chance. They're playing a lot of the best of the best. Atlanta Reign, Houston, Boston, best from the West, some really good East teams. It's going to be a tough uphill battle for sure. I'm hoping they can do better, though. Nonetheless, it's still a very awesome moment for them, bare minimum. I mean, it's great for their fans to overcome the choking labels and not have to witness losing to the Gladiators a third time already this season. And as a result, we got some pretty wholesome moments, too. I don't think I have the clip up, but someone looks so happy. I've never seen a guy jump for joy like that. I'm happy he didn't get hurt, by the way. He literally fell to the ground over excitement. That's the kind of stuff, though, that makes it awesome that Mayhem made it, in my opinion. They're a very wholesome team. Someone is a very easy guy to cheer for, as are the rest of those guys. Really inspirational story, and I'm hoping to see them make a pretty decent run. That kind of does it for your winners / losers of the upper bracket / the finals. We went over Gladiators, Mayhem, Boston. Those were the big storylines of this tournament for sure. So now we're going to move on to some of those other teams that got eliminated a bit earlier on. And I think a place a lot of people would want to start is with the San Francisco Shock, right? They've been the talk of the town for basically a month now because of all their disappointing performances. And to a certain extent, I'd say it continued, but at the same time, they maybe showed a little bit of improvement. The Shock copium enthusiasts out there are maybe a bit happy that they didn't lose to Titans, and they at least made the first half of their series against Mayhem competitive. But I don't know if that's enough. I do not know if that is enough to really get you excited, to really signal a turnaround, so to speak. Also, again, with the StompOWL website, I guess I'll go to this. Yeah, they lose 3-1 to Florida Mayhem. Barely beat the Vancouver Titans. I don't know if I'd consider that to be extreme improvement. They beat a team that, in some people's eyes, they should have been beating to begin with. I thought Titans were going to beat them, but, regardless, they beat a team that they're better than on paper, I guess I should say. And then they lost to a good team. And in the second half of the series, it was pretty bad nonetheless. The storyline, though, at the Shock, though, right, is how they went about this change, how they went about this more competitive nature compared to previous weeks. They looked pretty comfy playing this strange Orisa comp that I was not expecting out of them. You don't really deem the Shock as an Orisa team. Orisa's usually a weird strat that only specific teams are going to break out, usually the underdogs. It's not something you'd expect from Shock, but I guess they are underdogs now, so it makes sense. This is what they look comfy running. They knew they needed to make some kind of drastic change because they don't look good in the mirror. And they ended up practically one-tricking it at specific times. The Titans, they used it a decent bit. And then the Florida series, it was 3 different maps, I think, if I remember correctly. They played that constantly. They loved running the Junbin Orisa and the double flex support. And it kind of worked, man. I give them credit. You need to make some changes. What you're doing isn't going to work. That running the mirror is kind of just bashing your head into the wall. So you try and get innovative. Krusty and his boys try to get innovative. And to a certain extent, it does find some success. Junbin genuinely played a damn good Orisa. His horse looked good. They played well around him, but Junbin himself made some really nice plays. I'm not used to seeing Terra Surge get that kind of value, I guess. He was comboing with his teammates. He was finding big kills in the clutch, 2v2ing. It was cool. It was really cool to see him find value on Orisa, who's generally, I'd say arguably the worst tank in the game, or one of the worst. So that was really cool. And on top of that, they're running the strange Moira Kiriko support combo. On stream, we were kind of referencing it as like a anti-support feed comp, I guess, because Moira and Kiri have a lot of survivability and escapability, but it's like such a weird combo. It's not something you'd expect. It worked for them. I'll give them credit. It definitely did help Finn and Vindame stay alive more, but you can't run that kind of comp the entire series, and that's the problem. Thinking outside of the box is great for a team that is in trouble, that's expected to do more, but this type of composition is just not going to be reliable on a consistent basis, and that's mostly why they failed. There were times where they had to play the mirror still, and a lot of the time, they still looked horrible on it, especially in that Mayhem series. Second half of that Mayhem series, couldn't really get away with running the same stuff, like especially on Esperanza, and you see the final result. They got blown the hell out on that last map. They didn't do that great on Hollywood. Like, there are a bunch of points in this series where they could not get away with their stuff. It was cool to see them try, like playing the Orisa on Junkertown and even on Hollywood defense, like even after losing the point, was interesting, really cool stuff. But being really cool isn't going to win you any sort of award, right? When you play the mirror, which is the most important thing right now, you've got to be able to step up, and their execution is still very much lacking there. He's saying Sombra just ain't it right now. It seems to be getting worse over time. Those EMPs are really bad. Vindame still randomly dies too much. There's a lack of confidence and aggression with their dives. They're too indecisive, and they just look really bad on a comp that they shouldn't. You'd expect their dives to be hella clean, but they're bad. And Proper can't do enough on his own. Like, he played decently in this series. Maybe he could have played better, but like, it's not up to one individual, like I've been saying with them. They're just not improving enough. We're seeing signs of life, which is cool, but it's not enough. And that's why we're heading into the break for the Shock, wondering what's next for them. They barely won a game that they should have in some people's eyes, and then they lost to a good team convincingly. Same exact results as the qualifiers. Nothing has really changed as far as I'm concerned, aside from finding a comp that can give them at least a little bit of life. They need to step up. They need to figure something out. We've been talking about it a lot. I don't know what else to say. Like, they should just be a lot better than what they are, and they're failing. And at this point, it makes you wonder, here at the halfway mark, when your expectations were so high but you're not meeting them, do you potentially look to make a desperation move to try and save your season? Is like a season-altering player or players that you could sign or trade for, or maybe even release, that could help change your outcome, that can make you play like the team you're supposed to be? Because we've been hearing, apparently, I think this is like from a vast, don't quote me on that, but I heard there's like potentially a trade rumor going on between a West and an East team, and I feel like it would make a lot of sense if it was the Shock. They could just immediately send over a Korean player, no problem, you know? And then in return, they can maybe get something that could maybe upgrade them. Maybe they're looking towards, like, I don't know, Shanghai, whoever it may be. I'm not too sure about that. They could be the team. It could be someone else. It's all just rumors. I don't even think anything is confirmed. But maybe they're looking to desperation trade. You have certain guys that aren't playing well, that have high potential, and other people you're not utilizing, like Max. Maybe you want to trade Max and Heesang in a package for something. I don't know what the plan is. Maybe one of your supports. That could be the idea, like with a struggling East team. I don't know. Maybe you can trade over some money to them as well, since you're the Shock. I don't know. If not, maybe you look towards free agency. A lot of those people from the East Knockouts contenders teams, they're saying they're LFT now. Maybe some of those guys could help. You look at some of those specific DPS players and supports. You know, O2 Blast have some guys available, amongst others. And I don't even know if that makes a difference. That's the sad thing. You need to make a desperation move, I feel like, in this situation, but it's also really sad to see them give up on a high potential team like this, maybe. Either way, I don't know if it makes a difference because there's so many good teams in the West. You're trying to build something up out of nothing, like halfway through the season. These teams have an advantage over you. At this point, the Shock, their season might just be chalked up already. Maybe they make a late season playoff push, but with what they're showing us right now, you know, usually this is a sign that things aren't looking good for you. If you're not improving after like one half of a season, you're probably screwed. We'll see soon enough, though. Shock, I wouldn't be surprised if we hear some stuff about them, whether it be through free agency or trades, very, very soon. Moving on from that, though, we're going to talk about another potentially boomed team, that being the Toronto Defiant, my friends, because they went out in the very first round of the West knockouts, this time losing to a very beatable alexyOWL. And I'd like to add, in pretty sad fashion, the way they lost this game actually hurts my soul. I'm so disappointed in them. Like, the bar wasn't set very high, but how they played in this series is quite concerning. Like, alexyOWL, I think they definitely played well. They deserve a lot of credit for what they did. They were clutch when they needed to be. I thought Fitz and Shockwave were absolutely insane throughout this series, but damn did Defiant play badly. Like, oh my goodness. This very easily could have been like a 3-1 for them in a W rather than a 3-1 loss. That's how it feels. Like, that's why it's so frustrating. It's like watching a car crash that you just cannot stop. Like, it's painful. You know where they're going. You want to turn them around, but they ain't listening. They're driving. They are driving away from you as fast as they can. Oh, man, it sucks. The last two maps in this series, it felt like they could have easily gone the way of Toronto. They probably could have just won 3 maps in a row and at least have made it to the next round where they probably lose to like Washington or whoever it was. I don't expect them to go far after that, but at bare minimum, they should have won this and gained a little bit of confidence. Like, Havana and New Queen Street were train wrecks, and that might even be an understatement, especially Havana, right? Havana was probably one of the saddest things I've ever seen from a struggling team trying to cling on to dear life against a team you know they should beat. They held alexyOWL at their own spawn until there was like 20 seconds left in the game. They're on point A, basically with no progress whatsoever. You're consistently spawn camping them, outplaying them, and then they manage to end up winning basically every other fight from there on out and finishing the map. You needed to just win one fight, basically, to stop them on point A. One more. You could have most likely full held them and moved up to a 2-1 lead in the series, and then bare minimum, you go to a map 5. I can't. You let them finish the map with that little time. You basically execute horribly with every fight, battle usage, OG dying before fights even start, getting picked off randomly, being split, not playing as a unit, and like you end up letting them finish with that kind of horrible time bank. Like there was like zeros basically on the clock for them, and you still let them finish. Havana is already a hard map to finish, you know, especially with such little time. Like that just makes it even worse. Havana is one of the toughest maps in the entire game to finish, I'd argue. So that's really brutal. Luckily, Toronto did end up fighting back. I mean, they got 3 points as well, and I believe actually finished with more time, but then they proceed to fumble again on their defense. And they let alexyOWL almost finish the map again with like 1 minute. With like 1 freaking minute, you let them get 5 points on Havana. 5! And then you end up laying an egg on your second attack, and that's it. Like, that is just boomage at its finest. You let Shockwave run all over you in this map. It's insane to me. It is absolutely ludicrous that they could not stop alexyOWL's attack to save their lives. They were so close so many times. Like, I've never seen such poor execution like that. And at this point, I kind of want to make a What's Wrong with Toronto Defiant video. I was initially thinking Shock, but with how Defiant are playing, they're probably on deck, ladies and gentlemen. They're probably on deck. Because that Havana was terrible. And then it transfers over into New Queen Street. It wasn't as bad as Havana, but New Queen Street is also really frustrating because, you know, they had a large deficit to overcome for most of this map. But then they make a late map push, they overcome it, they have like a 20-plus meter lead in enemy territory with 30 seconds, alexyOWL have to completely flip the map, and then they end up losing 3 straight fights and losing the series. Like, they fumbled at every single corner. They needed to win 1 fight in like an overtime push, and alexyOWL were done. This goes to a map 5, maybe you clutch it out, but no. But no. They just could not figure it out. Again, the execution was bad. They let alexyOWL walk right in and do whatever they wanted to, and they end up surrendering a lead that seemed pretty insurmountable considering how many fights New York had to win in a row like that. This feels like a broken team to me. This feels like a broken team with no real confidence in what they're doing. Some people are going to blame the DPS, they're going to blame OG, Collusion Monkey, or the meta because of how bad they look as a whole on it, but it goes beyond all of that. All that stuff collectively goes into it. But I just think they're struggling no matter what they try. Like, every solution is a failure. It goes beyond some of these individual aspects, I guess. Like, when you can't play anything in particular correctly, and you're trying your absolute best to, like, rotate pieces and come up with these solutions, but you still fail, it's got to be a lot deeper than just that. It's a fundamental team thing, which is not something I thought I'd be saying about a former North American champion. But that's the truth. It is obvious they cannot execute, and their confidence is in the dumps right now. They thought it would be easy. They are excited to be back with each other, and it's backfired. The resistance has surprised them, probably to a certain extent, and now their confidence is all but gone, and you're wondering what the heck's going to happen next. I feel really bad for them. Like, some of those guys are trying their best, but to no avail. I think of Hydron, Ultraviolet, even Sam. I mean, he came in on, Blizzard World, and made a big difference, and he got hyped, as you can see here on the screen. Like, he is talking mad smack. He is hyped. He's trying to get his boys back in this. They're all smiling. Like, he's giving them energy. He's still talking. He is still talking. He's a spark plug off the bench. And you know what they do after this? They lose 2 maps in a row. Like, you're going to let that go to waste? This guy's trying to be your leader. He's trying to give you energy, and you lay an egg on him. Like, brother, what are we doing? It's just so sad to see those types of performances and that kind of, like, try-hard leadership go to waste. I'm very sad for Sam, and I'm very sad that Toronto Defiant could not wake up. Like, that's just really brutal. And now their future just feels so questionable. It's so bleak heading into this break. Like, is something going to happen to them? Are they going to make drastic changes? Are people going to want to leave the team? Are they done? Like, don't quote me on this. Like, I've looked everywhere. I've scoured on the internet, but I could not find it. But I've heard, at least from my chat during my co-streams, that OG leaked, or there was like some sort of OG Discord leak. Like, that there's like a breakup maybe coming for some of those players, like management's changing things. Again, take that with a grain of salt. I don't know if that's true, but that's what people have told me, and they've wanted my opinion on it. And I'm like, huh? What the hell are you talking about? I guess something got leaked on Discord. I haven't found anything, but that's what I've heard. So it makes you wonder what's gonna go on here. Are certain players gonna get released? Are they apparently, maybe part of that trade with the Eastern team? Are they gonna make some sort of other trade at the break? Are they gonna look towards free agency and just add pieces? I don't know what the game plan is for Defiant. Like, that would be, like, catastrophic. That'd be devastating to break up this core. They're all friends like this. That would be brutal. And I don't know if making any additions would help you make any sort of comeback. Like, I'd like to see them make additions but keep what they have. I think that'd be ideal, because they're most certainly not out of it, right? Like, if you look towards the standings, if I can get there. If you look towards the standings, I mean, they're not that far out of, like, contending for a knockout spot. Or, like, maybe making the playoffs. Like, they're 3-5. It's not like this team is 0-8. They're 3-5. You definitely need to make some drastic moves happen to avoid having just a really sad, mediocre season. But it doesn't mean you have to tear things apart, potentially. I really hope that is not what's to come for this team. I just want to see them make changes and, find the improvement. I don't want to see them die out. That'd be hella depressing for a team that was supposed to be the core that kind of ended Toronto fans' suffering, so to speak, of not having to deal with constantly changing your team anymore. Looks like that's probably not in the cards, though. It's really sucky, and I'll probably be talking about Defiant again very, very soon. So look out for that, folks. Now for the East, though. I think I've kind of addressed all of my important West teams, like Justice in New York. It's just like whatever. So I'm going to move away from them, and we're going to talk about the East, because some crazy stuff definitely went down over there as well. On Saturday, we had freaking Dreamers and Dreamers and Dallas Fuel both getting W's over teams that they may not have actually been favored against. I mean, especially Dreamers, right? Dreamers is where we're going to start, though. I mean, they freaking beat the Guangzhou Charge. That is, like, absolutely insane. But they 3-1'd the Guangzhou Charge, the top seed in the East heading into the knockouts. The best record, the best map differential. They beat them. And, while it was close, they beat them good, man. They were just the better team. It's not something I expected myself to say, because Guangzhou have been so impressive. Like, yet again, with high expectations on the line within the last couple of years, they aren't able to meet them. They fumble whenever it's, like, at the most important moment. It's a tragedy. But Dreamers, let's give some praise to those guys, huh? A couple of weeks ago, it looked like they were in the dumps, right? that they had absolutely zero chance. They were dead in the water. They looked garbage against Poker Face. And now here they are actually making it all the way to the finals of their side of the knockouts. That's crazy, man. That is absolutely crazy. They looked like one of the weaker teams, and they ended up finishing as one of the better teams. And now I believe automatically they'll be in the knockouts for the playoffs because they ended up having such a good performance. So that's great. Like, the turnaround is absurd. One of the better ones I've seen. This is short-term memory at its finest. First it was last week, now this week with this big win against Guangzhou. Like, Spectra's continuing to go ham. This guy is ready to make Overwatch League. Someone pick this man up. His tracer is insane. Then also, critically, the supports were holding their own. I think they are largely seen as like the weakness of Dreamers, but they looked really good. They showed great improvement as the weeks went on. And they even showed better flexibility too. I think that's pretty important to note. The Rhine comp, they're kind of seen as like this Rhine team, almost like the Eastern version of London, I guess, in a way. This narrative that they could only play Rhine, but then they started to play better on Winston and some other things. What's his name? Ligue, former tank of the Spark, looked incredible on the Diva. Absolutely insane pop-offs from him. And I think Dreamers in general just showed some great progress together, and they deservingly got a really high spot in the knockouts. And I'm excited to probably see them again this September. It's great that they're sticking together and that they went on such a clutch run. They were exciting. They couldn't finish it in the end. They ended up getting blown out by Spark, but still pretty cool nonetheless. And I think they should feel pretty proud of themselves for this final result. On the other side of it, though, O2 Blast end up falling short against Dallas Fuel. It's a toughie. End up losing 3-1, losing 3 straight maps. And honestly, while it was a close series, it's really sad to not see them push this to a map 5. Like, the scoreline doesn't do it justice. This was very back and forth, but it's tough to see O2 not go out in a map 5, like, especially after nearly beating Seoul Infernal a couple of weeks ago. That's a tough one. They just got outplayed in the clutch in this one. Dallas Fuel were ready for this, and they showed us flashes of the past, genuinely. Like, it could have went either way. It was a really close series. I just think the Dallas guys stepped up when they needed to. Hanbin, I think he won player of the match in this one. He went absolutely crazy. His Diva went hard in this series. He ate so many pulse bombs. He was all over it. He was everywhere at once. This felt like the Hanbin of old. But more importantly, in a lot of people's eyes, I think Bliss maybe had one of the best main support performances we have seen this year, if not the best. His Lucio was like actually game-changing. I have a clip here if you missed it. So we're in a situation where O2 Blast have a chance to win this push map and take us to a map 5, right? I believe they have the lead at this point. It's hard to say. Wait, let me rewind. Yeah, I think at this point, they might still have the lead by a little bit. Or maybe not, I don't remember. Not important. But Dallas Fuel are looking to close out the series in overtime, right? You know, they get a big kill into Hanbin here. It's looking like there's a chance. I think they even take down MCD, if I remember. But Bliss starts going crazy. No, they don't take down MCD, never mind. But yeah, Bliss starts going absolutely crazy in this clip here, just to run it back one more time. I keep talking over it. So he gets that cool kill in the Marvel. It's like, okay, whatever. But this right here is like the reason that they probably end up winning this map. I mean, there's no guarantee O2 turn this around, but just booping opener while he's mid-beat and killing him so it's an Ajax was like so big. Because O2 Blast had a little bit of presence, like I think... Irony was still there. They maybe could live for like a little bit longer if he doesn't die right here. Like, the supports could heal each other up, keep each other alive, but this insane play by Bliss kind of ends it. Like, I don't know if anyone was close enough, but maybe there's a chance someone gets there is what I'm saying. And then Dallas end up pushing it through and winning. Yeah, they were down. Yeah, see, Top Dragon was there. He ended up getting the touch. So, like... with that beat, maybe the backline stays alive for a little bit longer and they can turn this. So really sick play by Bliss and great play by Hanbin as well overall. Really great series from Dallas. It was good to see them have arguably, you know, their best game against a good opponent so far this stage. Like, they had a couple of good wins against like Dynasty and Dragons or whatever, but this was like the performance you wanted to see from them. Beating O2 Blast the way they did. O2 Blast have been very impressive, so good stuff out of them. But in the end, it doesn't matter for Dallas or Dreamers, as they both got rolled into the next dimension in some 4 Overwatch. Infernal and Spark dominated to the finish, and deservingly so get their spots in the mid-season madness. I can swap over to the East here. Yeah, there you go. So it's 2 4-0s. Really just not close from start to finish in either of these. Starting with the Spark, I guess. I think they made headlines for one, disappointingly not getting their Zhou rematch, but 2, Leave having an absolutely ridiculous game. Leave and Shy showing their potential. I think that was like the main theme as to why they're so exciting heading into this tournament. Leave was absolutely absurd on the Tracer. If you missed it, he had like 55, I think it was 55 final blows to 10 deaths and 4 maps on Tracer alone, which is just absolutely stupid. 55 to 10, this is final blows. This is not eliminations. This is kills that he got himself to 10 deaths. If we add in eliminations, like, I don't even want to know, man. Like, that is a ridiculous KD. Just an absolutely insane match from the former MVP, who's getting hot at the right time alongside alongside Shy. Honestly, I'm a little disappointed Leave did not get the MVP of this matchup. Like, it's kind of wild to me that Shy ended up getting it. Sad stuff, but still, Dreamers didn't have a choice, or a chance. I almost said choice. Dreamers didn't have much of a chance at all in this one. This was just all Spark right from the beginning. And now they're going to Korea. They're finally getting their swagger back, so to speak, and at the absolute perfect time. It was a bit of a slow start for them, but when it has mattered, as they tend to do in their history, they step up and play well. And now that they're finally realizing their potential, they might end up surprising some people in a couple of weeks from now. And I have similar words for Infernal. I mean, they've been pretty consistent throughout, but, the same theme of them surprising people could come into play. This is a very talented team. MN3 and Zest are looking to kind of right the wrongs of last year and be clutch. They're very motivated to finish the job. MN3, his Bastion went crazy against the Fuel. I think it was in the upper bracket finals. His Bastion went insane. And then Mag's Ball in the grand final was also crazy. Great to see that again. Infernal just had the complete advantage over Dallas. They ended up winning this one rather easily, I'd say, even if the scoreline might suggest otherwise with like the 2-1s and stuff. Seemed like Infernal had a pretty good grasp on Dallas, and they're maybe just mad they didn't play Guangzhou. So now the real question becomes, though, can Spark or Infernal end up beating this whole East is weaker than the West narrative? That is something a lot of people talk about. A lot of Eastern fans think that their region doesn't get enough respect, but a lot of West people, and I think a lot of people in general, realize the West is stronger. But if you're asking me, I think the answer is yes. They probably could both beat this APAC is weak narrative. It's going to be an uphill battle, no doubt. There are some really strong teams, but I think it's doable. They both have the talent. Infernal, I think they're looking to improve. A lot of their players are motivated to make it far. We've seen Zest and MN3 go on runs last year. They're experienced in these scenarios. They're confident. They've already told us before that they want to actually win more this season, look good in the playoffs. Here's their chance to give us a preview of that. And then Spark, like I was saying before, this is nothing new for them, right? We've seen them make runs like this a couple of times in the past. Leave, Shy, and Gushwei, they just play so damn good in these big tournaments like this. Like, I wouldn't be surprised if they do good. People are quick to forget that APAC was seen as weaker last year as well. I think that's part of it. Even though they still did pretty well. Spark nearly beat the eventual first place finishers in mid-season. Infernal got top 4 in that. Spark made a deep run in the playoffs. Like, it's possible for these Eastern teams to do well. They're the underdogs, but I don't think you can rule them out. If anyone can do it, I think it is these two teams. And there is a solid chance they could end up shaking up the bracket and making it look a little different than you might expect. I'm not saying either of them will end up like making the grand final, let's say. But I think at the very least, they could make a decent run and catch some people off guard, especially since West teams are not used to playing the East. So that's kind of where we're at, really. I think that basically sums up my Eastern Conference thoughts. In terms of what's to come, the tournament, I think, is going to start on the 15th of June. That's Thursday for Americans. It's going to be late. Well, early in Korea, I guess. It's like, they start at like 10 a.m. in Korea, I think, which is wild to me. It's like 9 p.m. Eastern time. It's a very late start time. But yeah, that's when that's going to happen. In a couple of weeks, there's going to be a week off. Keep that in mind. We will be 1 week without Overwatch League. So good luck to people who desperately need it every single week. It's going to be 6 teams. Double elimination, though. 500K on the line for first place, I believe. A lot to look forward to. You got Mayhem versus Spark. Boston versus Outlaws. It's going to be a late night grind, especially for Americans and, of course, partially Europe. It's awesome. I'm hyped. I hope you are too. We're going to get a little bit of a break for now, though. Before we end, though, as we move away and kind of step away from the knockouts and midseason madness, I wanted to shift my focus to one other point that actually has nothing to do with any of this, that I found very interesting, that is like worthwhile news to cover. And that is that OWL, the Overwatch League, I should say, is waiving the franchise fees of Toronto Defiant. Overactive Media, like the people kind of like in charge of Toronto, they ended up coming to an agreement with the Overwatch League. And it says here, key highlights of the agreement include the signing of a sponsorship deal between Toronto and the Overwatch League and the elimination of any outstanding entry fees. There's like $10 million or whatever for a lot of these teams in entry fees, and now Toronto Defiant are excused. Don't have to pay that. That's something that Overwatch League teams have been complaining about for a while. They think it's ridiculous because they have not gotten any sort of real return. So it's good that we have this kind of agreement. It makes a team like Toronto and some of these other franchises happy. And also, on top of that, the agreement provides for the parties to explore further changes to the Overwatch League business plan moving forward. And it also means there's a sponsorship deal in place, I'm assuming, so maybe OWL's could have some more sponsors now, which is awesome. And the value on this agreement, which includes early pay of league revenue share, sponsorship agreement, and elimination of entry fees, is valued at $10.8 million. It's going to vary by team. I think the inaugural season teams had to pay more. But yeah, Toronto Defiant, don't have to worry about this $10 million now. Great for them. And that's going to be recorded here in 2023. This is pretty good news. This is pretty good news, as teams earlier this season, well, and during the preseason, I should say, were rioting over this stuff. They're tired of it. They're trying to reach some sort of agreement with the league, and it seems like we're moving forward with that. They're actually showing care and trying to make their owners happier, which is great. You know, it's a small thing. Obviously, they still did lose millions in the end, and it sucks, and this is not a great investment for them. But this is at least a step in the right direction to show the league caring and trying their best to make up for their failures, so to speak. New sponsorship opportunities for OWL now, which is cool, with Overactive Media. I love that. That can help with the league for sure. All it takes is one to get us going. And now, on top of that, it makes you wonder if there's more stuff to come with other teams. Like, this is a really good sign that the league is doing some good to make their owners happy, and this probably isn't the end. I'm sure Toronto is only just the beginning, really. I'm sure other teams and, their big orgs will kind of move towards these agreements too. Toronto are the first ones, but I'm sure you'll see some of these other big ones who are very involved in this make some announcements very, very soon. It gets people slightly more optimistic, I'd say, about the league, even if it's just a teeny tiny bit. It helps out tremendously to make sure the people running it are happy. I'm hopeful that this can add at least a bit more positivity into an otherwise sad league, though. I'm excited about the future with this. I can't wait to see other teams make their cool announcements and to maybe also do some sponsorship stuff like with Overactive Media and the Overwatch League. I think with a couple of sponsorships on the way, that could help make some other people more interested. Even if it's just slightly. Like, I'm not expecting much. I'm still, kind of expecting things to be bad because we're in the esports winter, so to speak. But this is a start that you need for a lot of different aspects. For your franchises, for the league. This is all good stuff. Overactive Media, Toronto Defiant, Overwatch League. Good job on getting this stuff done. This is a great day. I'm glad to see some kind of positivity in the air and a rare W for Overwatch League franchises. Aside from that, though, ladies and gentlemen, here in this long, rambling video, I think we're ready to conclude. I think that's just about all I got for you. I wanted to share this last piece of information because it is interesting and it is some kind of positivity to share with you that doesn't actually have to do with the games themselves. It's a little bit of a shakeup. I'm pretty happy, and I'm sure you guys are too. But let me know what you think of this, as well as the midseason madness and the regular season coming up as well. Or not the regular season, the midseason madness, and what you thought of the last week of the first half of the regular season down in the comments below. Make sure to give this a like if you enjoyed and you want more Overwatch League podcast episodes just like this. I should have some guests coming on relatively soon in the coming weeks, so look out for that. It's not just going to be ATP solo all the time, I promise. Sub to the channel if you're new as well, and I'll catch you guys in the next one. Peace.